got team coverage from around the world right now. News Nation's Kelly Meyer is live in Anchorage, Alaska. Robert Sherman on the ground in Kyiv, Ukraine. Kelly, I'm going to start with you. Robert Sherman on the ground in Kyiv, Ukraine. Kelly, I'm going to start with you. What is the latest from Anchorage?
Yeah, hey there, Jesse. President Donald Trump feeling cautiously optimistic ahead of that face-to-face meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin here in this beautiful setting of Anchorage, Alaska. But critics are saying that the whole thing is already pre-baked Alaska, meaning they believe that President Donald Trump is going to cave to Putin's demands. But President Donald Trump, as you heard him say there in an interview this morning, he also spoke in the Oval Office talking about how he will know within 2 to 5 minutes if it's a good meeting or a bad meeting. And he says if it's a good meeting, that means that there could be an offer for peace. Now, critics say President Trump is giving too much away by having this on U.S. soil and that he's not going to put Ukraine first. Trump already, as you mentioned, setting the stage for a second meeting that would include Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Take a listen to the president earlier today.
All I want to do is set the table for the next meeting, which should happen shortly. I'd like to see it happen very quickly, very shortly after this meeting. I'd like to see it actually happen maybe in Alaska where we just stay because it's so much easier. But I think that I think it's going to be very interesting. We're going to find out where everybody stands, and I'll know within the first 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, or 5 minutes.
Now, we were over at the joint base where this meeting will be held, and there was already a lot of attention, a lot of security, and all eyes certainly watching for this moment. Jesse?
Yeah, Kelly, how is President Trump incentivizing Putin to make a deal right now?
Yeah, and there's a lot of skepticism and questions around what President Trump is going to do here. There's been some talk, some reporting, some speculation that he will give Putin access to Alaska's rare earth minerals and also lift some American...
Give Putin access to American minerals after invading Ukraine. That's preposterous. Now, there's no proof that he's agreed to that, obviously. So to even, it's speculation, so I have to give him credit for that. But there should be absolutely nothing he gives to Putin. How are you going to give part of America to someone who invaded another country? Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But we'll see how it turns out. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt for now.
Sanctions on Russia's aviation industry. There's some reporting of that, though the president saying today we'll see. But that's getting some pushback from even Republicans. Former Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger, he's a staunch supporter of Ukraine. He accused President Trump of opening up Alaska to the Russians and saying, quote, wow, let's see if Republicans defend this. So there's going to be a lot of questions around what happens tomorrow, and we won't know exactly what happens until we see those two meet one-on-one, and then, of course, with those aides by his side, and then hopefully have a joint presser after to have the chance to ask him questions about what really went on behind the scenes.
That's a great point. How is this going to be communicated after the meeting? We have to keep eyes on that. So, Kelly Meyer, thank you so much. So now the question is, where does this all leave Ukraine? Well, I'll tell you what, let's check in with Robert Sherman in Kyiv. Robert, what are you hearing?
Despite the fact the Ukrainians will not be in Alaska, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky saying tonight his country will not reward Russia for their invasion, and they have no intention of parting ways with any of their territory. President Trump saying that's not what this round of conversations is about. His number one focus is determining if Russia is serious or not when it comes to making a deal. With Russian President Vladimir Putin saying today they are coming to Alaska earnestly, and they do believe there's an opportunity for diplomacy to
Apologize
prevail.
for the buffering.
The current American administration, which, as everyone knows, is making, in my opinion, quite energetic and sincere efforts to stop the hostilities, stop the crisis, and reach agreements that are of interest to all parties involved in this conflict.
Ukrainian President Zelensky does not see it that way, however, and is warning President Trump to not be deceived by the Russians.
Stop the crisis. You invaded a country. You invaded a country. You started a war for absolutely no reason, obviously, to obtain power and to control the country. But you invaded a country for no justified reason. So there's nothing to be discussed except for you to move out.
Meanwhile, what we're watching on the ground here in Ukraine, Russia has been upping their attacks in recent days, trying to push deeper into Ukrainian territory, particularly in the Donetsk region, with the Ukrainians saying that they fear that Russia is preparing. Then Russia's goal is to try and push as deep as they can into Ukraine, take as much territory as possible in order to bolster their negotiating position. Jesse?
Robert
Nonsense.
Sherman, thank you. So what can we expect tomorrow? That's the big question. Well, I want to talk with a man who's been inside these meetings, a man who studied Putin for years at the CIA, former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Bill Taylor, and the former director of Russian analysis at the CIA, George Beebe. Thank you both so much for coming on. Ambassador, I'm going to start with you. President's saying his chances of success are what, 75%? What do you think the chances of success are, and what is success tomorrow? Ceasefire?
That's the right question, Jesse. He's been very clear. Stop the killing. A ceasefire stops the killing. He said that he said that in the campaign. As Putin has even acknowledged, President Trump has put a lot into this effort to stop the killing. So that's the goal for tomorrow. I wish it were 75%. I think it may be a little less than that because it's going to take pressure on Putin for him to come to the table and agree on a ceasefire or agree to work toward a ceasefire with President Zelensky. Now, you've made the point earlier that in order to have a ceasefire, you need two sides. You need President Zelensky there as well. But so that's why tomorrow is not going to be the breakthrough, but he's probably right. He'll see very soon whether or not Putin is ready to negotiate toward a ceasefire.
And again, how it's communicated after. Now, George, I want to talk to you because I was reading your talking points before you came on here, and I actually promoted this on social media. We talk about how there's a lot at stake tomorrow, but you are saying that it's not just at stake for Russia and Ukraine. You believe that tomorrow, this is a matter of global security. Can you emphasize what we're talking about there?
Well, there are a couple of aspects of this war that are important to global security. One is the U.S.-Russian military relationship. We're as close to direct combat with the Russians as any time since the Cuban Missile Crisis. We're not yet directly at war, but we've been flirting with it for several years. And that carries with it the risk that this will involve nuclear weapons use. And that is a profound threat, not just to American national security, but to global security. The other part of this, though, is about the broader international order. We're facing a rival in China that is unlike any.
Wait a minute. Why is Melania there? Why is she there? I understand she's the president's wife. What would be the point in her being there? Putin's, maybe if he had a spouse, maybe somewhat, but this is serious business here. There's no reason for her to be here. Sure doesn't show up for anything else.
Rival the United States has faced. Unlike the Soviet Union, China is both a military power and a serious economic power and a technical demise to dealing with that rise of China. And it makes no sense in that situation for us to drive Russia and China together so that they cooperate against the United States. So I think what's at stake in the meetings tomorrow is putting the U.S.-Russian relationship on a much safer, much healthier track that minimizes the likelihood of direct military confrontation.
You see this here? That's Putin and China. Allies. Strong allies.
But it also establishes a more normal relationship with Russia and disincentivizes close security cooperation. Normal relationship with Russia and disincentivizes close security cooperation between Russia and China.
George, that's a really good point, because you do wonder if one of the things that Putin wants out of this is to say, hey, Russia's no longer isolated. We're on the global stage. We're at the talking table. We're at the negotiating table for President Trump, for him to negotiate peace. And he's kind of been, vacillating between how he stands versus Zelensky and Russia. But there is something interesting here, Ambassador. You say that the way the president views Putin is very, very different, that he hasn't done a 180 on his stance regarding Putin, how he views him, and whether or not he can back up anything he says.
You're exactly right, Jesse. President Trump, I believe, over the last 2 months, has figured out that President Putin has been dishonest, that President Putin has not been a partner in negotiations, that President Trump, instead of tapping him along, has been leading him to believe that he's ready to have a ceasefire. No.
Well, Trump must be the only one that didn't know that. Putin's been in power for decades. There's been many intelligence done on him. He can't be trusted. He's the enemy along with China, but he's one of the top enemies of not only the United States, but the world in general. He's a dictator. And if anyone ever thought you could have any kind of trust in him is absolutely foolish.
President Putin wants all of Ukraine. He wants to eliminate Ukraine, and he is not interested in stopping this war. This is what President Trump has now figured out, that Putin is not ready to come to the table unless President Trump uses the leverage he has to put pressure on Putin to come to the table and stop this war.
But George, what about the hardliners? We talk about this so many times. I want to put this up right. There has been a surge of videos that are resurfacing on social media of Russians saying, we need to give Alaska back. If we can have that, let's put it up real quick. Now, if you were distracted by the catchy tune and don't speak the language, it's basically give Alaska back, right? So we know that Russia had sold Alaska to America. I mean, what are we talking about here, George? Are the hardliners, this propaganda video, it's a symbol, are the hardliners really going to be influencing Putin, and what degree?
Well, I think the question of returning Alaska to Russia is really exciting. Opposition on his right that is not insignificant. So there are a lot of people in Russia on the nationalist right that believe Putin is too soft, that he's too willing to compromise with the West. He's not tough enough in defending Russian compatriots living in Ukraine and other parts of the former Soviet Union. And he does have to take those views into account. So he doesn't have infinite flexibility in what he can negotiate. But I do think that Russia is interested in a settlement of this war. It is not interested in a ceasefire, particularly not an unconditional ceasefire, unless that is tied to some broader objectives that the Russians have that they believe are vital to their security interests. And I think the critical ones for Russia are making sure that Ukraine will not be in NATO, making sure that NATO forces are not going to be stationed on Ukrainian territory. If he can achieve that, then I think the possibility for negotiating the terms of a ceasefire and all the other aspects of this conflict that are going to have to be negotiated become possible. And I think that's the thing to look for tomorrow.
By the way, we had this billboard up. We can put it up again. I believe it's in Siberia. It's basically give Alaska back. So in case that's what you're seeing right there. Ambassador, what shape, though, is Russia in? Right? I mean, we talk about that Russia has this deficit. They're not getting as much income from oil and gas exports. You have spoken about the idea of what could be the sanctions seeing right there. Ambassador, what shape, though, is Russia in? Right? I mean, we talk about that Russia has this deficit. They're not getting as much income from oil and gas exports. You have spoken about the idea of what could be the sanctions that America puts forward on Russia. What kind of position are they in? And they're losing troops during the course of this fight.
Oh, they're losing troops, thousands a day Jesse. They're losing 30,000 a month. The Russians are in difficult places, but they are making grinding progress on the battlefield in parts of Ukraine and Donbass. But their civilian economy is paying the price. President Putin has shifted resources from the civilian economy into the military economy. And you're exactly right, to shut off the revenues to the Russian economy that fund the war. President Trump has indicated what kind of sanctions, what kind of sticks he will use. He has said that he's going to put very severe sanctions, tariffs, on those nations that buy Russian oil. India buys the most Russian oil by the latest account from the Financial Times. China used to buy the most Russian oil. President Trump has already put tariffs on the Indians because they are buying Russian oil. He could continue to do that. That's one of the big things. And exactly what you say, Jesse, that will reduce the flow of revenues into the Russian economy, and that will reduce the revenues that are available for the war. So that's the goal on the sanction side. The more important side, though, Jesse, is that President Trump has agreed that U.S. firms can sell weapons to the Europeans for them to provide to the Ukrainians to be able to defend themselves.
Right. By the way, 70% of the Ukrainians want an end to this war. So a lot has happened. Appreciate it.
Testing